You're now live. Go for it.
Hi, and welcome everybody to Let's Talk About. Our topic today is, what does your family need? Um, Most of us here are from the Scottish Family Party, and we will, I'm sure, represent a lot of the views from the Scottish Family Party. Uh, but in this conversation, we are here as individuals, and we just talk about our views here and there. I'm sure we will refer to the policies of the Scottish Family Party, but overall, this is just a conversation about what we think and how we feel about certain things. So, as I said, today's topic is, what does your family need? And I would like to start with the question, and please just raise your hand. Who has a family? And in now I refer to family as in who has children. Raise your hand. Okay, okay. And who wants a family? Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Um, I thought a good start to start the topic, um, and in that regard, uh, Robert, I mean, you can still give your opinion even though you don't want a family. The first question I wanted to ask is, what are you worried about? So, in regards to your family, the future of your family, or starting a family, what are the things in society that you're worried about? And I'm going to start with Fraser.
Oh, crumbs. Was not expecting that. Oh, well, I do have a son. I've never met yet, so that's the interesting part. So that's technically, even though I do have a kid, I don't have a kid in a sense, but yeah, strange one. Um, if I was to meet meet somebody and get married, have some kids, even though I'm 45. I yeah, at least one. I think it's just more society. I mean, the way they're being, the kid teaching kids and all that stuff, and the
Okay.
discipline. I think it'd be good have it being an area where you can have good discipline in kids, good structure. They know that if they do things, that they're not going to get away with it, and
Okay.
you're not going to get into trouble for just simply disciplining your own kids just because you're teaching them. So I
Okay.
think that's important. Um, Education, depending on where you may be, and that's important because if you and yeah, you want to make sure they're going to get the best education in what you in your budget or what you can afford, whether it's local, it's at normal schools or private, and that they're being taught in the manner that you believe, and it
Mm.
will benefit them down the line and what you hope to your children to become. So I think a good foundation in that at the beginning is good. Teaching them early and like general teaching kids early. I think there's a lot. What there's not these days is teaching kids from a young age of what we like, just helping out, sweeping up things in the house or cleaning up or out in the garden or the simple chores or simple things that don't probably parents don't quite, because they're either glued to a computer game these days, which I'm guilty of. And so it's so easy to do. And I think that's a lot of or they're on their mobile phones. Is literally we're all literally we disengage. We're like this constantly on our phone, And yeah, I think it's trying to at least indoctrinate some sort of structure in their life which should benefit when you have a
Mm.
family. So it means they know what's right and wrong, and they know that if they do something, they have to be there's a level of discipline so they understand, so they don't do it again, and then they'll grow up to develop
Oh,
a good work ethic and things. But anyway, I will stop speaking there and let
okay.
you carry
Okay.
on.
So, can I cut that down to the things you worry about in regards to like the future of a family and having a family is good education, um, discipline, so that certain standards of discipline are upholded, government overreach into your family life and raising children in today's climate with social media? Is that a
Yeah,
fair representation of your worries?
I'd probably say yes. Yeah,
Okay, okay.
I agree with
Uh, Michael, so in regards to your family and the future of your family, what are the things that you're worried about?
Okay, can I first say what a good summary you gave there? Excellent chairmanship. Um, well, I'm more concerned, I suppose, about the grandchildren. I've got 5 children and 8 grandchildren and another grandchild on the way, and we're a very close family. So I take a great interest in the education of the grandchildren and very concerned about the standard of education they're receiving.
Mhm.
And because I mean, I I always used to do the homework for the other ones. That's why they're so successful. You know, my own children. And then, but some of the stuff the grandchildren are getting, and of course, I'm very worried about the sex education, and we're monitoring that very closely. But one lot of grandchildren, they've had to go to a private school in order to keep a lid on this, and because the private schools seem to be more accountable to the parents and keep them informed and give them every opportunity to remove the children from any inappropriate material. So I'm very worried about that, the sex instruction. And I suppose a thing, because I'm coming to the end of life, I want to pass on, you know, I think it's terribly unfair that what we pass on to our children, this that we should be able to pass on to our children, is grabbed by the state almost immediately. Your body's hardly gone cold, and in terms of inheritance tax, and you know, what you've sort of built up, and families, you know, are about developing a future and a future narrative, keeping certain things in the family. Um, Families are destroyed at the end of life. They try and break that all up, and the state is interfering immediately with these. And I know that's a characteristic right across Europe. So I'm concerned about that, how you can pass things on to your family, and shouldn't larger families get certain benefits in terms of inheritance? Because there's, you know, there are more children to inherit things, and half the time you're sort of working and putting bread on the table to help these children and these grandchildren. Are you able to summarize that for me and make some sense of it, Philip?
Yes, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So you are worried about the kind of sex education that is being delivered today, then keeping parents informed from the
Yeah.
school and disrupting family legacy. How
Yeah,
does that
good.
sound?
That's it. Good.
And by the way, to be honest, I had no idea about like the problems of the inheritance tax. I wasn't aware of that. I was aware of that in Germany to some extent because I lost pretty much all my father's money to my brother. My father is still alive, so I'm a bit more informed. But that's interesting. I didn't know about that. Um, was that an accurate representation of what
Yeah,
you?
I mean, you should be looking for a new job as chairman of the Scottish Family Party.
I'm, I'm already
Michael, you're not sacked yet.
working on that one. Martin,
Yes.
what would you say? What is there other areas that you're worried about?
Well, thankfully, I'm not quite as worried as Phil about passing away yet. But
Michael.
Fraser's synopsis really of where he stands is much the same as mine. There's a thing I've been looking into a fair bit recently because of the way kids are being educated under the curriculum, and that is the absence of having kids memorize. And it's something I've really dug into deeply in the last few weeks. They don't memorize the alphabet. They don't memorize the times tables. And it's because some kids struggle with memorizing. And so in order to close the attainment gap, they support the lower kids that are struggling and aren't letting the top kids move on and memorize and continue their studies further. And the memorizing and the research I've been doing, all the doctors and scientific data that I'm finding is that when kids aren't memorizing at a young age, it's something we think about logically, but this is now proven in fact that if they're not exercising their brain, the brain is a muscle, if they're not exercising that muscle to memorize, then they won't learn information very easily later on. They don't retain the information and therefore can't recall it when they need it, either in higher education or in life. So the whole memorizing thing is really a basic principle that I'm worried the education system is passing by, and I don't think these kids will be able to catch up in the future.
Okay. Thank you very much. So you have the point, because obviously you had an overlap with Fraser's point. So
Yes.
your point is that in the area of education, there is no focus on training the brain to actually like how to learn and how to memorize things.
That's right. Yep.
Okay. I'm gonna go over to Masedi now, then to Robert, then to Dave, and then to John. And don't worry, John, I will tell you what the question is about. Good to see you. So, Masedi, in regards to having a family or starting a family, what are the things that you would be worried about?
Well, for me, I would say lack of family, like extended family. That's one of the things that worries me. Even though I have a huge family, but I feel like that should be important in the upbringing of kids, because luckily for me, when I was growing up, I had a relationship with my aunt. So even when my mom passed away, it was easy for me to integrate living with my aunt because I was used to being around her. I was used to being around her kids. So I think that is one of the things that worries me a little bit. I hope that I will keep on having the family structure that I have with my extended family, so that my kids can have the same experience, so that if anything ever happens, then they would have family to be able to take them in and integrate easily into that family setting.
Okay. That's an easy one. Lack of extended family. Anything else that you want me to add to that comment?
No, that's just about it. I think that's the core worry that I have. Other than that, I'm okay. I feel like the world is evolving, but I'll figure it out. I'll see how it goes. Our parents did the same thing, so I'll do the same thing. I will learn as I go.
Okay. Next up, I would like to ask Robert. And since you don't want family and you don't have family, obviously you can also think about your parents or your extended family, and if you have worries in that regard. What are your views?
I wouldn't say that I'm not sort of totally opposed to families. It's just I'm not really planning on getting married or having my own family. But I think my experience has been that I think my situation is born out of frustration, because I was brought up in Northeast Wales, and my mother's father was Welsh speaking, and we used to have to go to their house every Sunday, and I'd hear the Welsh, you see. So that was a very important part of my upbringing. It was the frustration of not being able to grasp the culture and to develop it as part of my lifestyle. But it's interesting what Martin Bell was talking about the schools are not teaching kids to memorize things, and I think personally, I think that bilingualism is a good vehicle because it enhances their personalities. I think once you learn one language, it's easier to learn another language. For instance, if you speak German, you'd learn Dutch, or I learned Breton a little bit. If you read it, it's
yeah,
a bit.
That is true. That's true. Yeah.
I know it's because I've been learning Dutch. I'm doing a beginner's course in Dutch, and I did an A level in German about 10 years ago, and it helps me a great deal to learn it. But coming back to the Welsh, I think my family relationships, although I'm close to my mother and father, and I've got nieces and nephews.
Can I interrupt real quick? Because I think that's a really interesting topic with you and the Welsh, because obviously we also have the Gaelic here, and on some of the Isles, it's a culture that is actually disappearing, unfortunately. So please continue. I just wanted to connect it with us here in Scotland. Yeah, thank you very much.
I do agree with you on that, Philip. It's been quite close to my heart, trying to learn Irish Gaelic, because I live in Manchester, and they've been teaching it at the St Kentigans, but it's not taught in a rigorous way as you would in the university, where you have to pass exams and all the rest of it. And I felt that I had a lot of responsibility to learn it, but in the end I just gave up, because it was too much for me to do. And but I'm not saying that I would never do it again. I kind of shelved it, or put it on the back burner, as people say down here in Manchester, for a later date.
Can I do you think, and that is, I would say that goes more into the direction of education and less about the topic of family and what we need for family. But would you think that pushing learning from, like, bilingual learning, especially in areas where you actually have two languages, it should be more pushed and more a little bit forced into culture, because otherwise we lose it?
I personally, I think, from my personal, it's a very delicate topic, because you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, as they say. I think with the Welsh, if my experience has been, if you try to encourage people to learn it, you can be seen as being a little bit overbearing towards them, because particularly if they don't want to learn it. But then you have to find ways. You have to be inventive, and you have to find ways to entertain them and to grasp their attention. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, you can be totally sort of frustrated with a situation and not even bother, and perhaps learn another language. Like I have been over the last few years. I've decided I want to learn languages that are spoken more than the Celtic languages, because I found it.
I have to shorten that here, because that's more about education. We really want to focus more about family, and like what we were about in regards to like our families in the country. For example, your parents, what's going to happen to them? Are there any worries that you have in that regard?
Well, they're getting old,
Mm-hmm.
But I think that because we're all getting old, I think that they teach me to be stoic about the fact that they are getting old, and everything it will come to an end one day. But I'm trying to be.
Can I ask you? Are you caring for your parents? And what is your plan? If you can talk about that, what is your plan about your parents when they do get older and need more support? Are you worried about that?
I would make myself available, but my brother lives very close to them, so, and particularly over lockdown, because I haven't been able to go there, I keep in touch with them, but I would just make myself available, and that's their decision, really, at the end of the day. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. That's good. Dave, what are you worried about in regards to your family, your children, grandchildren? What are your worries?
Is it permissible, first of all, for me to pick up on a couple of things that have already been said, Phil, that I would love to just input? Tell me no if that's not allowed.
We'll go in most
later.
Of these points. We go back into them. Yes. So if you can add new points, that would be very helpful.
Yeah. Okay. For myself, I'm at the stage where I have grandchildren. I was just down to Dundee earlier today to meet up with. They came up from Motherwell, and we went down to Dundee to meet them from up here north of Aberdeen. The very reason that I got pulled into the political sphere, which I've avoided for all my life, is this very fact that within the education system, they're going to be teaching primary age children that they can choose if they want to be a girl or a boy. Now that just caused me such alarm at treating children in this way that I had to get involved. So that is of great concern to me. I want to see that stopped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Any other concerns that haven't been mentioned yet?
I guess one of the things that I want to see is men taking their proper place as fathers. I love the greatest influence upon my life was a wonderful mother. My father had mental health problems, and so I greatly appreciate what women bring to the table, but I want to see fathers beginning to take their role seriously as a complementary carer for their children, but as somebody different.
Okay, thank you very much. As somebody different, different to the mother.
Yes. Yeah, okay. Bringing different qualities.
Yeah, I wrote down fathers in a strong role. Is that okay?
Perfect.
Okay. Before I hand the microphone over to John, I'm gonna just chip in real quick and tell you about my worries. My biggest worry has always been losing my children. So I was always terrified of ending up in a relationship where, in the end, the mother of the children would take my children away, and that the legal system would be so stacked against me that I would not be able to see my children. So that has been my fear for the best part of over 10 years. And so for me, the legal system is actually a big fear, which touches into government overreach, what Fraser said in the beginning. And another thing for me is actually so my first fear is losing my children to a potential vindictive partner, and the other fear is losing the children to the government. And we are all quite outspoken here, and I never feared about losing my children due to my controversial past, but now I'm fearing that at one point I might lose my children just because I was standing up for family rights, so to speak. So these are my worries. So they are all very, I would say, like a real Damocles sword hanging over me. John, the question is, what are you worried about the situation of your family or families in Scotland today? What are the things that worry you?
Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Very well.
Yeah. I'm just trying out a new headphones and mic that my young grandson brought to me. I think my biggest fears are for my grandchildren. I would say my daughter's biggest fear is for me because I'm so outspoken and have been for the last 30 or 40 years. And I think sometimes she, oh, Dad, please don't say that, you know. But I think most of the things sometimes I talk rubbish, but most of the things that I say in that vein are quite sensible, certainly in line with the policies of the SFP, you know. I worry about this sex education thing. I was kind of completely unaware of it, and mainly because my grandchildren go to Catholic schools. and Catholic schools are very much exempt from the sort of government interference thing, you know. But it does creep in, and it creeps in different fashions. And I think, you know, I spoke to Spuck years ago, and their approach used to be to attack or to persuade Westminster MPs to change track and become pro-life. And they would do that, and they'd get 10 or 15 on board. There'd be a general election, and they'd be back to nil type thing. So they've changed the track in approaching and targeting the young to try and get the pro-life message over.
Okay.
And that's the right way. But I think there are so many other agencies that are doing exactly the same thing for different motives, you know. And I think that would be my biggest fear. The other thing I've noticed recently is that the end of life, people, dignity and dying, etc., are all really pushing it just now because of the election. And Nicola Sturgeon has already agreed to review the state's policy and the state's laws on that. So that concerns me greatly. I've been involved and had power of attorney for a number of people who have died, and some of them have had long deaths. But palliative care has made it non-painful. But not one of them would ever even have considered end of life, assisted end of life.
Okay.
But when I look at the comments on Facebook for these things, it's absolutely shocking, you know. Although I haven't found anyone who does these replies that has volunteered to inject the needle themselves.
Oh, that's a very good point. I want to get back into that later on. Just a second. So one of your big concerns is like the increasing of assisted suicide as an option.
Yeah, but I mean,
Okay.
to be honest with you, it's not in vogue at this moment in time, but many of the party's policies are to have abortion on demand, you know,
Yeah.
to decriminalise abortion. And that to me would be the ultimate abhorrent law there could ever be, to kill more babies in the womb without any checks. No checks, no balances, just go for it. And
I
that,
looked it up yesterday, and there are 14,000 abortions in Scotland each year, which is half of the size, I think, of Inverness. So when you walk through the streets of Inverness and half of the people would just be gone, that's the amount of people just in Scotland. I would like to.
I know we're just talking about Scotland, but in the world, there are an estimated 60 million abortions every year. And that does not include things like the morning after pill and abortifacient contraception. It is absolute. I mean, that's the population of Britain that's wiped out every year.
But I think, I mean, that's a huge topic, but I think in regards to abortion, we would have to talk about things like, do young mothers or do mothers get the support that they need to actually have the children? I think that's a very, very big topic. I want to read out 2 comments, and we are open to comments. So if people watching want to ask some questions, please send a comment down. I would like to read out 2 from Hatters81. His fear is being alone. In regards to family, just I assume not having a family, not having family support. And in regards to assisted suicide, he said he would inject the needle if someone he loved would ask him to do so.
That's the first person I've heard say that.
I think like many deep philosophical topics, each one of them would fill a whole lifetime of debate, what is right and what is wrong. So what I would like to do now is I'm taking all the topics that we mentioned before that touch education and scrap them, because next week's topic on Sunday will be education, and we want to talk about that. So the other issues that we touched were in regards to family is government overreach, raising children in a more and more difficult society, disrupting family legacy, that was about inheritance tax, lack of extended family, that our family structures are more and more falling apart, the role of fathers, that is in many cases lacking. In regards to fatherlessness, Scotland, if I remember correctly, is on place number 3 in Europe, only topped by Ireland, and I think, I can't. It wasn't Lithuania. I don't want to say a wrong country, but we're on place number 3 with 20% of all kids growing up without a father. Then my point was losing children to the government and injustice, and then being alone and assisted suicide. Now, I would like to add a couple of things to the list that we haven't mentioned, and these are very crucial things, especially up here in the Highlands. I know about it. Housing. To start a family, to have a family, you need a place where you can actually start a family, and that becomes more and more difficult, because in some areas it's almost impossible to find a place or to buy a place. So housing, I would add. Work. Unemployment is a big problem, because to have a family, having a family is quite expensive. And we're going to talk about the tax scheme of the Scottish Family Party, our proposals in a moment. So work. Yeah, I think these are a couple of good points. Now, I would like to give Michael and our other candidates a little bit of homework, not homework. I would like you to do it right now. In regards to government overreach, what are the issues at the moment, and what can be done about this? And both of these questions also go to, obviously, the ones that are not candidates. But yeah, just raise your hand. Yeah, Michael? We can't hear you.
Yeah, we've reached this point where we believe that government can solve every problem, and when we look at the way the other candidates are electioneering, they're just promising more and more, and they're upping the ante, and it's as if the government can fix the economy, it can fix families, can fix schools, can fix education. So we've got this mindset. And of course, we are true libertarians. Scottish Family Party believe in delegating the responsibility to the basic unit of society, which are families, delegate to them the power to do what's best for their own family. And I think families sort of predate religion. They predate government and society. I think it was the first building block when groups of hunters just had families together and bonded together. So it's like almost a prehistoric unit. So it's not created by government, not created by churches. This is the fundamental building block of our society. And we've got this mindset now that the government, that big government, can solve all of our problems. And I think we're trying to get back to a truly laissez-faire libertarian. This is where the power should lie. It should be delegated to these very small communities, and they may choose to work with other smaller communities, but that's where the power That's where the power should reside, and that means that you need a father playing the father role, a mother playing the mother's role. That there's discipline in the family. But what a beautiful thing it is, and I was very touched by that message that came in from a viewer about afraid of being alone. And I'm thinking in this lockdown, those of us with families, I mean, what a great support that is, and to have a sort of love of a family, and that you're never sort of left out. That I know it can be quite an old-fashioned notion, but family is a great, great thing, and without it, that's the end. So we've got to prevent this encroachment by government, and we need to sort of mobilize this wonderful resource. Am I online with that answer? I'm not. I think I've lost track of the original question. Did that make sense?
I think you went a little bit off track, but overall, but it was still very informative. So I would say, at the moment, the government is a nanny state, and you would like to give this power back to the families and more focus on community. And am I right to say that it might be a good role for the government to help the communities to do their own stuff? Is that a good role for the government?
Yes, as a broad principle, this idea of delegating power and authority to the smallest decision-making unit, I think that's a principle in terms of Catholic social justice, and it's a good principle for the way we organize any state. But if we don't stop this encroachment by government, I mean, it's such a dangerous trend, and we've got to have these proper checks and balances, and we seem to be losing that. And we're putting the very fact that everyone's succumbed to these lockdowns and wearing masks, it just shows you that we haven't got this independence of mind, this independence of thinking, and we're just kowtowing to big government. And big organizations and big tech, they're dominating.
Don't move too much away from family. Michael, you know what? I think you should become a politician. Does somebody else want to say something where the dangers of government, where they see the dangers of government overreach at the moment, and what they think could be done about it?
To add in with what Michael was saying, it stems straight into how we're raising our children.
Okay.
And the freedoms that are being taken away from parents in how we discipline our children. And I know that's the media and our opponents in politics would like to point the finger that we keep saying discipline. But much of how we form our children's decision-making ability is in discipline and reward. And so in the inability of being able to discipline our children for fear of reprisal from the state, which is where we're getting to, we're not far from that at all. And so as parents, we walk on eggshells, and our children also going to school know all they have to do is say, I feel like my parents might be bullying me at home, and all of a sudden child protection's at your door and your life's turned upside down.
Yeah.
And all you actually might have done is taken your child's phone away or a PlayStation away because they were cheeky. And these things, it's gone too far already, and it's a slippery slope that the government appears to want to continue on in order to bolster their control of families.
Okay. I wrote down children are being manipulated into state dependency, and teachers and children are being used as spies.
Pretty much, yep.
Dave, I think you had your hand up, right?
Yeah, one of the things that I think really frustrates me is where the narrative is taken over by folk that hold an opposing view to us. So I actually object to the use of the word smacking ban, because for me the word smacking immediately associates it with a hand, which if we go back to the old narrative of reasonable chastisement, whilst it has an old-fashioned feel about it, it immediately takes away that sense of aggression. You know, the narrative that it's given is using the word violence, which I think if somebody responds very quickly to a child and uses their hand to smack them, that can almost be treated like violence. If we start to talk about reasonable chastisement, we're thinking about discipline for the child's benefit. We're not talking about the gratification of the anger of the parent. Yeah, sorry.
I think, to be honest, no, absolutely fine. I think I already started something similar, creeping in maybe in the 80s when there was such a panic about pedophiles or child molestation, that a father taking a bath with his child was already seen as a potential child abuse, and fathers became more and more careful actually interacting with children. And I think we still have that, and I think that man actually really, like, I suffer under that. There was a situation where a little girl fell into nettles face first, and I ran towards her to help her, and then I stopped and I shouted to some women and said, "Could you please help this girl?" And at that point I said, that will never happen to me again. In the future I will help, even if it brings me into a bad situation, because you should never be afraid to help. And I think this fear of, there is child abuse, and there are parents hitting their children in an abusive way, and that is very different from, like, in one instance, giving a smack because the kid put itself in danger and you have to communicate this was really, really bad. And I think the government is not very good at differentiating when something is appropriate, when something is not appropriate. I used to work as a youth worker up here in Durness, and I worked for an organization called Highland High Life, and I would say they trained us to spy on the families. They said, if you see anything, and it doesn't have to be something important, if you see a little bruise or something, you report it. And they said it several times, and I said, sorry, but I will not do that without having a real reason to report it. And they almost, I would say, bullied me, or they wanted to bully me to do that, and I then resigned. I said, I will not spy on the parents. I will, if there is an instance, I might go to the house and just check that everything is okay, but I will not just report them to some office in Inverness or Edinburgh who don't know the families, who don't know the circumstances. And I asked them, what would you do if I reported? And they say, oh, we are very careful. We would send somebody up to ask the neighbors if they saw something. In a small community, that's how you destroy, that's how you can destroy families. And one of our listeners, she told me a few days ago that she was actually also trained in looking after children, and she is a mother of 3 children, and she had to stop this training because she said the same thing. She said, I was being trained to ask children about the family life in such an intrusive way. She said, yeah, we're using children as spies, and now I'm worried about what happens with my children in school. Are they being used as spies against us? So sorry, that was a long monologue. Who else wants to say something about the dangers of government overreach into the family? Mercedes.
Yeah, as you're speaking, the thing is, I feel like there's need for, there's a saying that says it takes a village to raise a child. And I believe that we need to go back to those fundamentals, because I remember growing up, if I did something wrong, the neighbor would hit me before my aunt came home. And if I tell my aunt that the neighbor hit me, she will go to the neighbor and ask, what did I do? And that kind of helped govern. Yeah, she wouldn't think the neighbor was wrong for beating me. She would question, what did she do, so that I will also whip her as well. So it kind of made manipulating non-existence at all, because, and I believe if we go back to that, we would know why certain things are happening, or why parents are doing certain things, as opposed to just saying, oh, they hit me at home. You don't even know what is going on in that child household. You don't know anything. The child might come to school with a band on their arm. You don't even know that that child did that on their own. You automatically think the parent are negligent. So I think we need to go back to those fundamentals of saying, let communities work together to raise those kids. And I'm sure that if something is extreme, they would report. Growing up, I used to get beaten. I don't find anything wrong with that. I do know that they should be, it should not be extreme. So I get that, but I feel like sometimes if the government overreaches, kids will grow up undisciplined. They will learn how to manipulate the system, because kids are very, very intelligent in terms of manipulating the system, and they don't understand that saying my mom hit me has a deeper consequence than your mom getting into a short trouble. So I feel kids don't necessarily understand the impact of what they say, and they say it innocently, not knowing the consequences. So we need to go back to letting communities deal with their own issues, and where communities feel, okay, this is too much for us, then they'll bring in the right people.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Any other comment regarding government overreach in family life?
I was just thinking that I think you do need some sort of monitoring. You could argue to the cows come home as to how much, but I mean, my experience has been, I mean, I'm a bus driver in Manchester, and I've heard women speak to their children effing and blinding, and I think that is totally unacceptable. My parents never spoke to me like that.
Yeah.
But I never speak to them like that. So I think, you know, the red light starts to flash when you see that happening. I think that's when some sort of reporting goes on. Personally, I don't believe in hitting children. I think because I think, well, I mean, I've got a cat. I would never hit my cat if she was naughty. She's wrecked the. I know this is perhaps a bit petty, but which is she's wrecked all the wallpaper in my wall in my kitchen and in my bathroom. But I just put up with it. I've had to steam. But it's just something I would not. Because I think that, you know, everything is, if you're living with a sentient being, I think you have to respect them, and as they would respect you, because your children are not going to poison you, or they're not going to assault you, or
well, that's the problem. They will. So they're like the number of children that attack their parents in cases of domestic violence from child to parent is not as small as you think, and it's on the rise, unfortunately, and that has in parts to do to, I would say, the deconstruction of families, like often like fatherlessness or divorce. So there are tensions and lack of discipline, but not like with smacking or something, from an early stage, just trusting the parents and respecting the parents. And I would say a lot of that goes back to education and good examples. And I was in a bus once. There was a mom with her kid, and the kid was screaming and shouting in this bus, and the mother would not discipline the kid for half an hour. And then I let out a shout. And I said, "You sit down right now and be quiet." Do you know what the mother did? The mother said, "I'm going to call my boyfriend. When the bus arrives, he's going to kill you."
Yeah, man.
That the problem is that as a society, I think we stopped looking out for each other and correcting each other. And I think when, for example, a mother in your bus behaves like that to her child, everybody around her should say, "That's not a way to talk to a child." I think every time we are silent when we see something wrong, and we might overstep here and there, but every time we are silent, we actually encourage it or we let it happen. What do you think about that, Robert?
I think that you need to speak up. You need to have the courage to speak up. If you feel very strongly about something, like if, for instance, I've seen a mother walking along the road, along the pavement, with a young toddler trailing behind her. When I've been driving my bus, and I felt as though I wanted to stop the bus and get out and tell her that she should have that child near her, because it's dangerous. If that child went wandering on the road and a car hit the child, then it would be disastrous. So
I think that's a good point. Yeah,
I think you do have to have the backbone really to do what you feel is right in situations like that.
Martin?
Having had several children, that oftentimes I find that a little smack with a child provides the attention grabbing that you need, either to warn the children of a dangerous situation or a situation they shouldn't be getting themselves into. Oftentimes, if you try to verbalize it and shout at the child, that actually has a very not diminishing effect. It has a heavy psychological effect that child struggles with. If you raise your voice to a child and you speak abusively, that hurts a child very deeply. But a little smack on the backside gets their attention and is quickly forgotten about. But the verbal aspect is a wound that's much deeper.
That's a very good point. And I question out to the parents here. I would say that a smack should always come with an explanation.
Oh, yes.
And I was only smacked twice. Once I knew why and I got an explanation. Second time I didn't. And I still hold that against my dad. Simply because I didn't know why, and I still think I didn't do anything wrong. I think he was just in a bad mood. Fraser,
should we bring back in sort of maybe a mild way, but whether it's mild or not, but a little bit of the old corporal punishment in schools? Because there's not. I certainly, when I was at boarding school, I certainly had the gym shoe across my backside. Let's just say it didn't tickle, and I also got a bit of wood across my bum. Let's just say it was, it certainly teaches you a lesson. Maybe we need this kind of. I know maybe it's a bit extreme, but maybe we need something of a say. If you're at school, if you don't obey by the rules, this is what you'll get. This is the. But
Fraser, I'd probably like if the teacher would hit my kid, I would probably go to the school and say, "One more time, and I'll hit you," depending on what my kid did. John, you were raising your hand. Oh, we can't hear you.
Hear you now.
Oh, now we can hear you. Now we can hear you, I think.
We were
Hello,
hearing
John?
you. You can't hear you now.
By the way, one of our viewers, he said in regards to losing or government control, he said the loss of civil liberties that took centuries to gain. To solve this, we need to demand to be treated as adults. I completely agree. That's the problem. The government does not treat us as adults. And he also says, I know why I was smacked. I got caught. John.
Okay.
John.
Can we hear you, John? No, we can't hear you now. Unfortunately, we still can't hear you.
Maybe unplug your headphones and plug them back in, John, and then just interrupt us so we know that you're back on. I would like to move to the next topic, and that's something that I'm really interested in because I didn't know much about it. Michael, could you maybe tell us a little bit about the inheritance tax and how bad that really is?
Am I back on now?
Oh, I can hear you now.
Yeah,
Great.
John, Jen, you're
Yes.
back. Talk to us.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll carry on. I'll just sit here.
Michael, okay.
I need to catch up in my sleep.
Are we that boring? We can't be that boring.
Not at
Michael,
all.
Michael, tell us a little bit about the inheritance tax.
Yeah, it's something we've lived with for years, and I think the allowance is 375,000 per parent.
Okay.
It's just this: if families are so important, and we're trying to have this legacy, and we're trying to hand over, if you have a family, and we've agreed it's important for society to have children. I mean, you don't have any civilization without children. That's the basic building block. They might be good or they might be bad, but it starts with the desire that you marry, you have a family, and one of the reasons is the procreation, the children. And the government's trying to fragment that. They'll support divorce, or they'll support the breakup of the family, or they'll take your children away from you. They'll stop you disciplining your children. And then when it comes to the end, where you're trying to pass on a legacy to your children, I believe that larger families are punished by the inheritance system. That there should be a tapered system, depending on the number of children who are going to share in this inheritance. And I know in Europe, it's a much better system that every child has a right to their inheritance. But you often find in the English law and Scottish law, you get disinherited. But with a larger family, I believe there should be a tapered system which protects this legacy a family have built up to pass on to their children and their grandchildren. And the current taxation system is designed to destroy almost any memory of that family. The government grabs it, takes that, and all that's left is a couple of gravestones. Mm-hmm. That's my broad point about inheritance tax.
What is the tax? Like how high is the tax?
Well, about 375,000 isn't taxed, and then it depends, and then it'll be. I think it goes straight to the 40% rate.
I think it's 40. Yeah.
Ooh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yep. And the other thing that further complicates this and makes it worse for the families is, should those parents need nursing home care, that is £1,000 a week for a nursing home. So that is charged against that inheritance, whatever that would be.
Yeah, and if you didn't have that capital, that would be free. That would be
That's
paid
right.
for
The state
by
provides it.
the state provides it. But if you have capital you're trying to pass on to your children, that gets taken into account to cover your nursing
It's gone
costs.
very quickly. If a person's in a home for a year, that's what, over $500,000 straight away.
John, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I was involved in just that type of thing. I had two brothers-in-law who were both in care, and you were talking about free or their state pension paid their fees unless they had a certain amount of money, which was over 22,000, something like that. And after that, it goes straight to £4,000 a month,
Wow.
And one was in for 6 months and the other was in for over a year. And I sold their house, and I was power of attorney for both. And the money went into their accounts, and it just disappeared. You know,
Yeah.
not a lot of people can afford £4,000 a month, and they still have a lot of money in the bank when they're finished. You know, so that's kind of a weird. The other kind of weird thing is that they could not make a gift to any of their sisters or any of their family without it being accounted for in the final calculations. You know, they both have sadly passed away, but it was a real experience coming across all of these rules and regulations where the guy in this room. Sorry?
John, can I ask? John, can I ask? Was there any chance for the family, the extended family, to look after them?
No, there wasn't, not because there was no one willing to, but because of their medical needs. They needed 24-hour health care and by a health professional, and there's no one in our family that matches that description, you know. So it was shocking, but it had to be done, you know. And at the end of the day, they both passed. Again, one with the SNP's initiative of sending COVID patients from hospital back to a care home. And within a week, 20 people had died in that particular care home of COVID, as did one of my brothers-in-law, you know. So I think
So much for assisted suicide, I would say.
that was a bit like assisted suicide, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Mm.
Now, I think ideally, if we can, we should look after our family as good as possible. And I don't know, how do you call that here in Scotland or in English? Do you call it the generational contract as well? Well, we have the term generational contract, which means you raise your children and you look after them and you invest in your children, and then your children invest in you and look after you. And it's a give and take, and I think that's really, really beautiful that you actually that you stay connected. And Masedi and somebody else, they were talking earlier about, well, extended family and the fear of losing that extended family. And I want to tie that into the topic of even the destruction of the nuclear family and fatherlessness. And it seems, I think, that from family comes strength. And I don't think it's in the best interest of the current governments if there is actually strength in the society. Who would agree or disagree with that? Am I kind of on the right path with that? Not strong opinions on that? Okay. I would say if we want to take power back, a good thing would be to strengthen the families, obviously. As the Scottish Family Party, what can we do to help families doing that? Any ideas? Michael, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've probably got to reach the bottom of the curve on this, because I mean, I think there's a death wish in Western Europe that we don't care about our civilization. And those figures that we spoke about earlier, you know, the fertility rate in Scotland is about 1.3. So this is a population in decline. We don't want children. We don't want to replace ourselves. In fact, we don't have any faith whatsoever in our future. And it's the same right across Europe, where the Christian heritage of Europe wasn't even mentioned within the European Union Constitution. If you remember, they tried to get some of the history and the influence of Christianity on Europe. That was left out. And we've got a death wish. There's no other word for it. There's a death wish, and I think it'll be up to just a small remnant who keep this idea of the strength of the family alive. And I think it's going to go to a situation where we'll depend on migrant labor to keep the economy ticking over. I mean, who's going to look after us? There's nobody. I mean, we're sitting on an inverted pyramid. It's all old people who are ill in nursing homes. The families aren't going to look after them, and there's no young children. They can't look after them, and that's why we're going to get the assisted. Definitely, you will have a duty to die, and that's the dignified way to go. We cannot support you. So I'm not terribly optimistic about a fight back. And the demographic time bomb, we've been talking about it for 20 years. It's set, and it's very difficult to recover again. And I'm sure Mercedes, you don't have that problem, but we do not believe in our own future, and we don't believe in families. We don't believe in children. Sorry, is that terribly depressing?
No, not at all.
It can't be totally depressing, Michael, because you're part of the Scottish Family Party, which is fighting back. You've given a very good reason for fighting back.
I would agree with that. John, did you want to say something? It looked like you wanted to say something, or you just rearranged your body to counter your stiffness.
I'm just moving this equipment around. So I've got an interview on Wednesday night on the live stream. I'm just moving it around to see what's the best position for myself.
Okay, so I interpreted
what I did want to say earlier when we were talking about the children and the education and all that kind of thing was, I mean, Nicola really knows long before Spuck started to target the children and give them philosophies and educate them about pro-life issues. Nicola had been writing. The children love Nicola. They think she's brilliant. And what she's doing is setting up the next generation. And she's setting up a generation who'll go home and tell their fathers and their mothers, Tories, Liberals, Labour, rubbish. You've got to be the SNP, rather than going along with a family traditional, I've always voted Labour type thing. That's where they're attacking there. And the punishment and the bringing back corporal punishment, the party that wasn't, it was on the news the other night. Richard got a fair hearing, but one of the things that they flashed up was punish children.
Yeah.
And my daughter told me yesterday that her friend says, "Oh, your dad's standing for the family party. They want to bring back corporal punishment to the school." I mean, that's the assumption that our people are making with that, and I don't think there is any way back for corporal punishment in school ever.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I really agree with that as well. In regards to the children, unfortunately, I think I have to agree. The schools really are indoctrination camps now.
Yeah.
But I talked to some young people today. I would say they were 18, 19 in Ullapool. I was canvassing, and I gave them our leaflet, and they were 100% on board with what we were saying. So, and I talked with them about education and that it should be stricter, and they agreed with pretty much everything. So that was very a very positive surprise. But I think they haven't been in school under the Sturgeon rule for too long.
Yeah.
I would. Yep, Dave.
I'm going to have to head off very shortly. Can I just pick up on something that was said earlier about well, what I would want people to be aware is that parents, even within state schools, have the ultimate power. Head teachers have to listen to parents, and if they don't, the parents can appeal higher up. There are head teachers that really want parents to come and speak to them on issues that concern them, because they empower the teachers to not teach the things that the government is trying to push on them. I know from another sort of conference type thing that a lot of head teachers long for parents to come and to direct them almost. Parents empower head teachers, but it's a really significant principle that parents often don't realise is within their power.
To be honest, I would say that ties also into what I said to Robert earlier on. You have to speak up. The problem is that we do not speak up. And I mean, that's, I'm sure, a reason why most of us actually joined the Scottish Family Party. I didn't want to become a politician. I think most of us didn't want to. But we felt like, well, if we don't speak up about certain issues, who will? Fraser, you were raising your hand.
Prime example today, actually, when I was out with friends cycling, a friend who his house is just backs onto Arthur's Seat, his garden. And when it was snowing, he had kids. He must have thrown a snow. He must be in his garden or something, but threw a snowball, and it caught him square in the face. But then he went up to them to tell him no. But then he had to go into his house, and all they did was all the kids, the people there just swarmed and just were pelting he's throwing snowballs at his house. So basically, he did speak up, but it made it worse instead of just ignoring it and walking away. So it's kind of bizarre. The kids these days, if they're on their own, you can speak up, but you're more likely to get yourself. You're just you could get beaten up. You could get anything because out of sight, out of mind, and it's a complete and utter crazy scenario these days.
I agree, and I think there are situations where you have to protect yourself and where your safety is more important than speaking up.
Yeah.
I agree with that, but on the other hand, if we let cowardice, let cowardice get our better self, or
I completely understand. I know what you mean, but if you were to, I think in situations, if somebody like you were in that situation with the bus, or if you just want to say, just please, do something with your child, or you've got to discipline something, because it's not just them just ignoring their child; they're disturbing the whole bus and the whole people who are. It's disrespectful, and if nobody's going to say anything, they're never going to. The parents not going to do anything about it. And so,
but see, the thing is, if everybody else had spoken up as well, and everybody else had backed me up because of the behavior, then I wouldn't have been in a dangerous situation. The problem is that we have, as a community, we have to support each other. Now, in regards to Michael's uplifting message of doom and gloom, I would say I see families that focus more on themselves. They focus on homeschooling. They see themselves as a tribe, as a real team, and they are incredibly strong. And you can see their strength portrayed to the outside. And I think that's what we need. I think we need everybody who holds certain values to really live these values. Obviously, also vote your values, vote for us. Thank you very much. But we all have to stand up. And if social media is a really, really toxic place, I know it. But if people don't even leave a like under a tweet of, let's say, the Scottish Family Party for fear of being called a bigot or something like that, if you are too afraid to stand up for what you believe in, then you are part of the problem, I am afraid. Any views in regards to that we are the masters of our society, John?
The pity about your social media is that it's always in German. Everyone, I don't know whether they're complimenting you or criticizing you, you know.
well, go on their profile. If there is somewhere a rainbow flag in their profile, then it's usually against me. If not,
I was.
Robert.
There's a translation button you can translate it into English. You press that.
Not always. Not always. No, you can't do
Yeah,
it always.
it doesn't translate the swear words.
But I mean, social media is a very, very powerful tool. I go on all the time. There's a guy today who posted about how well thought out our educational policies were. It was absolutely brilliant. But your problem is your party is mixing religion with politics because of the pro-life thing. So I had a dialogue with this guy about it and said, you know, politics, why should there be no religion in politics? But abortion is not religion.
Religious,
It's a
yeah.
human rights issue, you know. And I had this conversation with him. And the next thing I get a thumbs up from him.
Mhm.
And I said to him, look, not everyone votes for a party that they agree with everything that party does.
I
I
agree.
said, if you think our educational policies are really, really good, and you're a school teacher, which he was, I says, then use your second ballot. Vote for the Scottish Family Party in your second ballot, you know. And later on, he sent me a comment saying, maybe, you know. So you can get through to people, you know.
So I would. Oh, sorry, Robert. Yeah.
I was going to say that. Thanks. About the Spock. Even if you believe in abortion rights, you're still not allowed to not believe in abortion. If you're in a job, for instance, and you don't want to take part or be party to an abortion by part of the process, you're obliged to leave that job.
Really?
No,
really?
you're not. What the situation is, and I saw this recently, that if there used to be a clause in the abortion law, conscientious objection, whereby if your conscience didn't allow you to perform or assist in an abortion, then you'd be removed and replaced by someone else who could. But the reality has been in recent years that if you don't do what they ask you to do, then you are hounded out. You're not sacked, you are hounded out of your job.
What's happened to those Scottish nurses?
The two midwives, yeah, they're out. They're no longer
They were midwives, weren't they?
Yeah, two midwives, Connie and someone else.
That to me isn't liberty.
Yeah.
Even if you agreed with abortion and you didn't want to take part in one, you would still be chastised if you like by. I mean, that's the absurdity of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
it seems that tolerance and liberty only goes one way at the moment.
Yes, absolutely.
And that is the big problem in our society. I would like to slowly wrap this up, and I would like to really bring the focus back to families and what change we want to see in the near future, hopefully through the Scottish Family Party, but also the other parties. I would really hope that some of the other parties actually start to look at the family unit again. It's not like we, the Scottish Family Party, want to exist. We exist because we have to exist, and it would be great if all the other parties pick up some of our policies and say, actually, a lot of that makes sense. So what changes would you like to see, John? I'm going to start with you.
Thank you. I think that the policy that the party has in terms of the taxation of families, I think it's good. I think I would go a step further and say that, you know, a family with a stay-at-home parent would not only get tax breaks, they'd also get the equivalent of what would be spent on their child and childcare if they did go to work. But giving it to them as a stay-at-home family, I think that would be marvellous. I think, you know, people say, oh, well, you can't just make it a bribe, a money thing. But a lot of families break up, and if finance isn't the key area that causes the breakup, it's often a strong contributory factor.
Mhm.
So I think that policy is one that should be expounded.
Okay. Masedi, are there things that that you would wish for in the future in regards to families? A change in society.
Yeah, I would wish that society will let parents be parents to their own kids and understand that each household will always be different looking at religion. Some people want to raise their kids a specific religion and which does not always align to what society feels is okay. For example, I would believe that a Christian household will teach their kids that being gay is a sin. And I feel that if you feel that way, if that is your religion as a parent, society should or government should allow you to raise your kids that way because that's part of your your religion and your way of life. So I feel that governments should see that each and every single household will always.
No, I just have a quick question, and that's a tricky question for everybody here. So, how do we feel about parents pushing transgenderism on children? Because that is also like giving parents the freedom to do what they want to do. So in case of parents want to dress their children up as a girl when they're a boy, I know that's now an uncomfortable question because we are for freedom, but this is freedom as well. How would we feel about that? Because I feel that it might be child abuse.
Okay, personally speaking, it's like you're saying, it's a tricky question. As long as you do that to your kids, I'm fine. I have a problem with it whereby you want to teach my kids. If my kids are at your house, I would expect you to not enforce that on my kids. And like I'm saying, it's a tricky thing because I would want to be allowed to teach my kids a certain way, which somebody might feel is wrong. Somebody might feel saying to my boy who feels he's gay that it's a sin. I'm in a way not treating them properly. So I would say as long as you don't do that to any other child, you should, but also allow society to teach your kids the right things at the same time.
Okay. Would it be fair to say, because I'm quite a libertarian-minded person, but at the same time, I want to protect children as well. I I would say it is okay that if there are real behavioral anomalies in children, that there should be we should have a look at that. So, for example, if children have very dysfunctional behavior and they come from a very religious background, I think it is fair to say maybe a psychologist should look into the family. And I feel the same way about like if, for example, there's transgenderism, it's the same thing. How do you guys feel about that?
I think that I think it's a form of bullying, isn't it? I think if you bully a child into well, transgenderism, I think that's as wrong as bullying a child and constantly haranguing a child about the way he feels. Perhaps I don't know. I mean, does homosexuality come out in a child at that age? Probably does manifest itself in some ways in very young children. But whether you encourage it or whether you discourage it, it's a subtle process. And I think that if you bully a child into anything, I think it's wrong. I think parents should stand back and observe themselves a lot more, because I think if you're setting an example to a child, that child will model itself on you somehow or other.
Yeah.
I think it's a form of respect, mutual respect, personally.
Yeah. I would like to read a comment from our comment section. Thank you very much from the viewer Gay for Astronauts, and he says that none of yous have ever had a right of your lives. That is grammatically incorrect. It's none of you have ever had a right or a right of your lives. It's not a great sentence, to be honest, and I have plenty of videos to prove otherwise, please don't watch them. um, so yeah, we will always be trolled by some people, and that's okay. We have freedom of speech. Haters will hate. John.
You know, we have to be careful because on one hand, we can't say we want to give back parental authority, but then say, but only if it suits us.
I agree.
You know? We've got to be very, very careful about that, because that's what's actually happening just now.
Yeah.
With the current government, you know, it's you are allowed by the transgender, by the homosexual. It's they're allowed to say what they want. We can only say what we want if it actually agrees with them.
Yeah.
So we need to be careful of that in parenting, you know.
I completely agree but that's why I asked the question, because I think these are things that we as society have to think about, and it's about balance. Complete liberty usually doesn't work, and complete control doesn't work. There's always like a fine-tuning. Fraser.
Right, a couple of scenarios. I use the app Clubhouse, which is very net for networking, which you may have heard of it. It's very good it's just voice only, but very good for creating rooms and good for topics like this. I was happened to be in a room talking about it was on the subject of trans and all that stuff, and the guy who was in the room, actually his kids are I think going through trans, or also acknowledge themselves as gender binary, and he actually supports it. And he even said, I acknowledge myself as a bit of gender binary. And I just simply said, well, I think it was I wanted to just have a general discussion. And I said I mentioned the school kids who got expelled from school by saying there's only two genders. And I was basically just like, okay, it wasn't like a kind of slagging match. It was I kind of opened the general just chatting about it and stuff. And I even suggested if you would ever be interested in having a debate about what you do, I said check out the Scottish Family Party YouTube channel, and maybe maybe I can set something up for you. Also, I've been in a group which was interesting about can you be gay and be a Christian, and some of them out there tell you that this is an interesting part. The amount of people who don't quite get that, and I'm saying they say they don't quite get that. Well, the key is they don't get the part when Jesus says you have to come into my you have to accept me into your life to be able to be born. You have to be born again, and don't quite accept that part. So you say you can all go to church, give it everything. I love Jesus, I love this, but I'm gay. So well, hang on a minute. How'd you get they don't quite work, because God doesn't promote that of homosexuality, doesn't promote same sex.
Fraser, the thing is, each and every one of us is a sinner. So
I know, of course, I know that. I'm just saying the topics in general. We're talking about that, and I'm just saying there's a lot of people who don't quite understand.
If I can quote our viewer, Gay for Astronauts, shut up, Fraser.
Okay, thanks. Okay,
no, just kidding.
No, I'm just saying it was a discussion, and people. I think there's a lot of people who call themselves a Christian, but more live the homosexual life. And I said, well, if you read the Bible, and this doesn't physically say, but if you understand, if you know God, if you know, you will understand that lifestyle is not. It's like Sodom and
Fraser, I have to tell you, each and every single one of us, if we define as Christians, we sin every day in one way or the other.
I agree with you.
And the question is just, are we trying to live the best life in according to the rules? And by the way, we're not a Christian party. We are a party with Christians in it. I would like to say my last bits about what I hope for, what change I hope for in regards to family. First of all, I want the family law system to be neutral, and I want there there to be a much stronger focus on mediation so that there are far fewer divorces. I think that it should be quite hard to get a divorce, and I think that therapy should be easily available for families not to fall apart. I think that the overreach in schools and in other institutions really, really needs to stop. The government needs to get the hell out of our families. But we're going to have to fight for that. The thing is, if you give the government power at one point, or if the government takes power, you have to take it back. And I think who said it earlier, that you can always go to the school and complain to the teachers?
David, yeah.
Oh, was that David? Yes, that's what we have to do. We as a party, we can do some things, but it's up to the parents to actually be parents and stand up for the rights of yourself and the rights for your children. And yeah, I think very important, and this is also something that we would like to do as the Scottish Family Party, is actually promote families and promote the values of families. I think children should know that what beauty there is in actually taking responsibility and starting a family. And the statistics indicate that people are happier when they have a family, or when they are closer with their family. And yeah, so promote families again, because you promote everything else. Any final words? I want a final word from Michael, please.
Well, thanks for sharing it, and I think it's been a great discussion. And I think I'm perhaps a little bit more optimistic about the future after listening to you all about the future of the family. And we've got to persevere and hang on in there. And let's hope the work of the Scottish Family Party, perhaps is a harbinger of change and of resilience. And it's lovely to speak to everyone. And I've got to get off to a family meal now. Okay.
Yeah. And one person in our meeting really needs to go to the toilet, and it's not me. I received a personal message. So we're going to wrap this up so everybody can go to the bathroom. It was a pleasure to have you. Thank you very much, and see you next Sunday. And to those of you that are campaigning, good luck with the campaigning, and try to ignore the hate that you sometimes receive. Yeah. All the best.
Thanks,
and Fraser, thank you so much for hosting this.
No problem.
Yeah, thanks, Fraser. Okay, bye, everyone.
Bye.